Good morning to you and welcome to K24 this morning. My name is Jeff Mote. Of course, as always, right at the start, like it when you're part of the conversation, you can get me at I am Jeff Mote or at K24 TV. Now, the by-elections yesterday marked a new low in how politicians carry themselves. The insults and chaos witnessed has brought to the fore the question of the perpetually soft electoral process underbelly. From Kabuchai to London Ward to Matungu, we saw honorable members of the August House not behaving honorably at all. We talk election chaos and electoral reform on K24 this morning, but as always, first, the newspaper headlines. That makes the mainstay for where we start. Front page of the PD, MPs arrested in by-election chaos. Tempers flare in day of high drama in Kabuchai and Matungu mini polls as rival politicians clash amid accusations of massive voter bribery and violence, with outcome likely to have far-reaching implications on careers of key politicians. As you can see right there on the extreme right of this particular screen, some of those held Samson Cherargei, Didmas Baraza, Nelson Kowech, and Charles Were. As far as that's concerned, some pictures from what happened yesterday. Security officers arresting one youth accused of causing chaos at Shiabo Primary School polling center in Matungu constituency yesterday. Number of people injured as rival groups faced off during the polls. And right next to that, Langata MP Nixon Korir kicks a tear gas canister back at police at Milimani Primary School polling station during the London Ward by-election in Nakuru Town West yesterday. These are just some of the scenes that were seen yesterday. Some of them even right here on K24 this morning as we got live pictures from that. Also on the front page of the PD, new rules to rein in exam cheating, security to be enhanced with COVID-19 protocols at the center of planning for KCPE and KCSE tests. These particular national examinations ought to be taking place in around 3 weeks or so. So, of course, it's all hands on deck as far as the government is concerned in terms of making sure that this process is held up in terms of its integrity and follows through right to the end. Uhuru flags off vaccines. President encourages Kenyans to get jab, saying he will take his at his own appropriate time. That's the story on page 8 of your People Daily. You can get the details of that particular story as well therein. And if you don't have yourself a physical copy of your paper, you can get it straight to your phone. The number that you dial is *550 *4#. It only costs you 10 shillings. It's brought to you by the PD and Safaricom. Look at the Daily Nation's front page now. Let's see what we have there. Day of shame. High-stakes by-elections in Matungu constituency, in Kakamega, Kabuchai in Bungoma, Nakuru's London Ward, and Kiamokoma in Kisii bring out the worst in politicians and their supporters. 4 MPs arrested, senator's bodyguard held for shooting a resident as police search for former cabinet secretary over assault. As you can see right there, the picture of Langata MP Nixon Korir kicking that canister back at the police. This, of course, during that particular by-election in London Ward. The details of that particular story right there. Look at the front page of the Standard. Same story they're leading with. Chaos, arrests, and bribery in many polls. And as you scroll further down on the front page of your Standard, as you can see, it's the same pictures right there. Shameful scenes, they're calling them, from what you can see right there. Violence, tear gas, and running battles that are marring a hotly contested Matungu and Kabuchai parliamentary and 5 civic by-elections in what is seen as a dress rehearsal for the 2022 succession polls. This story is on page 6 and 7 of your Standard. Front page of the Star, as you can see right there, seems like Langata MP making the front page on all the dailies this morning. DP Ruto MPs make U-turn over JP cash deductions. They're looking at a different story right there. As you can see, Tuju confirms party received all February contributions from Deputy President allies. This is a story can be found in your copy of your Star, even as we wait and see how Jubilee moves forward with the different changes it's made in terms of its leadership. The details of that right there. Quickly, front page of the Business Daily, missing 4.5 billion shilling risks COVID-19 vaccines plan. MPs disclose allocation not in spending plan starting July when second phase of inoculation starts. Already, we have the 1.02 million doses having been taken to the Kitengela National Storage Facility. Then from there, redistributed right across the country. But as you can see, there's that big gap in terms of funding that needs to be sorted out even as we move forward and get ready for the second phase. And you can find this story in your copy of your Business Daily with all that therein. So that's what you're waking up to as far as your papers are concerned this morning. But today, we're talking about by-election chaos and what we've seen so far. Now, there were by-elections in several wards around the country. They took place at Hell's Gate, Huruma, Kiamokama, and Kithuki Kitise wards, among others. The seats fell vacant following the death of Hell's Gate MCA John Wasusi Jogona, Peter Chomba, and Kennedy Maina in Kitise ward. The seat fell vacant following the resignation of Kennedy Mutuku. This is a story that was filed yesterday. Just a wrap-up of what happened with the various by-elections that took place. Let's take a look.
The voting exercise kicked off at 6 a.m. in the morning with a heavy presence of security at the various polling stations following a recent confrontation between Muungano Party officials and security agents. There was low voter turnout in most polling stations. However, the Kitise Primary School polling station with 1,029 registered voters experienced long queues. Wipers Sebastian Muli and Joseph Kioko from the Muungano Party voted at the Kitise Primary School polling station and Mikaoni polling station respectively.
Kuanzia kesho hakuna siasa, hautaona zile ngari nyingi zilikuwa zinazunguka huku, hautaona wale wakubwa wanatoka wa Nairobi. Kile utabaki nacho ni wewe na maendeleo yale italetwa na yule umechangua.
Ndani watu wamejipanga mzuri, IBM imesema kila kitu mzuri kufika pale ni kuangalia hadi yako.
At the Kiamokama ward by-elections in Kisii County, 4 people escaped death after their car overturned during a confrontation between opponents. The quartet were allegedly attacked by a rival group over voter bribery claims in the mini poll. The United Democratic Alliance candidate Moses Nyakiramba was arrested during the vote. Nyakiramba alleged that his arrest was illegal. Also arrested were Don Bosco, Zahir Chanda, and Dalfant Nyatige. In Nakuru's Hell's Gate ward, the returning officer David Mbui admitted that voter turnout was low compared to other elections. However, he was optimistic that the numbers would increase during the course of the day.
Mambo ambayo pia yanaendelea ambayo si mazuri kama voters bribery, wanapeana pesa, na hilo pia ningeomba polisi wazidi kuchunguza, na mmoja akipatikana pia sheria ichukuliwe.
Have received very good support from the stakeholders and we want to truly appreciate. The KIMs are working well.
Elsewhere in the Huruma ward by-elections in Uasin Gishu County, election manager Jen Getonga disputed claims of bribery of voters during the poll. Today's by-elections were marred with violence and the arrest of various political leaders. Kenyans can only hope that this is not precursor to the 2022 general election. Mombi Wambogo, K.
Okay, that's the stage for the discussion we're having this morning. In studio, joined by Hesbon Owela. He's a media and political communications expert. Morning, Hesbon.
Morning.
Karibu sana, welcome to the show.
Asante sana.
Thanks for making time. Nordin Kagai, a lawyer as well. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, bro.
Asante sana. Also joined by Dennis Thumbi. He's a governance expert. Morning, Dennis.
Very well. Good morning.
Asante sana. Thanks for making time. Let's just jump right into it. Hesbon, let me start with you on this one, because we're having a situation where we have low voter turnout, but chaos on another level altogether. These two don't go hand in hand, because clearly, if the stakes were that high, you'd have more people voting. Yet what we saw yesterday told a totally different story. What gives?
Well, I think the stakes are extremely high, and they've been hyped by politicians. And therefore, what you see is just a contest between politicians, and not necessarily an understanding from the voters on what the by-elections are all about, which is very unfortunate. Because when you see the front pages of all the newspapers have a member of parliament from Nairobi County having very serious confrontations with police officers in a ward by-elections in Nakuru County, it tells you that it's not so much about the people of Nakuru or the people of London Ward as it is about the stakes that politicians are trying to claim in some of these by-elections. And it's probably something that politicians are looking at in terms of what Elizabeth Noel Newman calls the bandwagon effect. Because what they want to do is basically build that team that creates the perception that they have political capital by winning these small-time, by-elections here and there. And it's unfortunate that in the process of doing that, to rally people around their cause for 2022, we are seeing a lot of chaos. We are seeing people getting injured. We are seeing harassment of electoral officials, intimidation of the voters, and confrontation with the security officers, which is very unfortunate from leaders who are given the powers to provide a conducive environment for all of us.
Dennis, I'll have you in on this one as well, because we also saw, as Lucy Chomba of the Jubilee party won the Huruma MCA seat, newly appointed Deputy SG of Jubilee, Joshua Kutuni, was there. And some people are saying for a ward by-election, to have that type and that card of leadership there to celebrate, really, what is the significance on the ground politically for such a win?
Thank you, and good morning. I think for the Jubilee win, which is within the geographic area of the Vice President, I think he spoke about it and he campaigned for the lady. So I don't see any tangent whatsoever. But what we saw yesterday is a grave concern, Jeff. Especially the voter turnout shows that Kenyans think that elections are futile, that their vote is not going to count whatsoever, especially when we are seeing voter suppression. Very early when you see candidates being arrested, when you see a deal mobilizing goons against an elected member of parliament, who, by the way, was a key agent, then what would happen is that generally the registered voters would resign to the concept that the vote will look like as though it's rigged, and that would compound the issues that we've seen around voter apathy. Kenyans think that an election is futile, and by the way, within this period of time that Kenyans are hungry, the 6 elections that happened, Kenyans think they have no consequence whatsoever in terms of putting their bread on the table. Jeff, the critical worry that we saw is that the institutions that are mandated by the constitutions to run a free, fair election are getting weaker, and political parties are mobilizing ethnically. There's ethno-mobilization. There's vigilantes and goons that have been heavily paid and mobilized around the parties. And also, the police force is looking as though it segmented itself, within certain dimensions that do not offer the freedom that is required democratically, and them enshrining the right of the voter to decide freely who they want to vote for. So this picture, in a country that we have only enjoyed maybe 1 year when we were, home COVID, some type of political freedom, we are seeing 4 years that we must be forced to undergo through this political madness, and there's no strength at all. So I think when we go to ask whether we need to debate the Kriegler report on election violence in this country, the fact that all the laws that contend as political irregularities and errors were commissioned, especially in Matungu and other areas, the arrest of elected members of parliament when they have done nothing, is a deep worry that we are going into a referendum, and then we are going into 22 elections when we even don't have the ability to put bread on the table yet. So I think this is a grave picture for Kenyans, and this will compound us further in voter apathy and the thinking that Kenyans now know that voting is futile because you're going into a football match that the outcome has already been decided.
Nordin, there's been lots of talk that this is a precursor, and you're hearing of 2022, or what you're seeing right now could be a stage rehearsal for that. Yeah. But even as we looked at the chaos that we saw and the violence that took place, it really wasn't, the voters or the public. It was members of parliament and different politicians behaving badly. Do you feel that this could be what takes us, tips us over in 2022?
First and foremost, it's sad what happened yesterday. And on a day when people were to elect their representative to take care of their interests, it turned out to be a contest for the big boys. And the big boys here are those pro-handshake, are those anti-handshake, and the new Niachie coalition. So it turned out that it was not about the people. The people were meant to vote for someone who will vote for them. And so this is more or less, it was more or less a 2022 game where someone is trying to assert the authority. And it's sad because at the end of the day, we who vote are the problem because we elect clowns. So when you elect a clown, expect a circus. So at the end of the day, if you look at the by-elections that happened yesterday, I wouldn't call them by-elections because those are not even elections because they offend the Offence and Elections Offence Act. Because all the offences that are mentioned in the Act were committed yesterday, be it bribery, be it undue influence, be it violence, be it state organs and security organs being used during elections. So any competent court can actually nullify any of those by-elections. Because it is sad, at the end of the day, the law is never followed. We have acts, we have statutes, we have the constitution, they're never followed. And that shows that it's more or less, it's a lawless country. For someone to have the audacity to first and foremost remove the mask of a presiding officer, then smack him on the face, what does that tell us? We are a lawless country. And if this is a warm-up to 2022, then we're in trouble. Because I believe maybe we have some goldfish memory, where we have forgotten about 2007. This is how it started. And if we don't take care of this situation, 2022 will be bad. Because we need to realize that Kenya is more of the voter than the politician. But sadly, we have given our power to them. So they control the stakes. The political instability we are seeing so far is courtesy of them everyone is trying to form a niche. What we are seeing, now we are having tribal groupings, where we have parties from certain regions, which offends the fact that we're supposed to elect people. So at the end of the day, the voter needs to rise up. Now they have MPs or ward reps who most of them didn't even vote. You saw there were tear gas canisters lobbed at the polling stations. So that in itself is an illegality because at the end of the day, those people were meant to vote. So you have an MP you know nothing about. So you have voted for a party or someone has been imposed on you because a certain demigod somewhere needs to show that they have clout. So at the end of the day, the Kenyan will suffer. It is not about you. It is more or less about them. So you need to make it about you. But the politics in Kenya is sad. If you look at the dailies, I was just discussing here with Hezbollah, Nixon Korir has finally made it in politics. He's on the front page of every single paper because of this. If you ask him any bill he has in parliament, you will be shocked. But this is our politics, and it is sad. These are the things that make us look like the laughing stock. When the West look at us, they laugh. Because you are talking about you were colonized, you got independence, but now you're colonized by the black person who purportedly fought for independence. So we need to wake up as citizens and realize that this is more for us than for the politician, because you've handed over your power to them. So you need to take back the power.
Hezbollah, when you look at this particular by-election that we saw yesterday, there's also a perception issue in terms of the process, how it works, and also the use of different state organs. Look at the police and who they were arresting and how they were doing it. For example, Belgut MP Nelson Koech saying that this is the second time I've been arrested because of by-election. It happened when we were in Msambweni. It's happening again here. This is the state using intimidation tactics. What do you think about the perception the public has in terms of the electoral process?
Well, I think that's the perception that UDA wants to create, you know, the Tanga wing of Jubilee, because it is far from the truth. You know, if you are arrested and you purport that the reason why you are arrested is because the state is intimidating you, the question you need to ask yourself, what exactly were you doing? Why are you in a situation or a space where you're going to be intimidated? And by the way, if you look at the arrest that they made yesterday, everyone was arrested. An ODM MP was arrested, Jubilee MPs were arrested, Jubilee politicians were arrested. But majority of the people who were arrested, if you look at this by-election, they were basically disruptors. Basically disruptors. It is a faction of Jubilee that sent the highest number of people in Kabuchai and in Matungu constituency. It is a faction of Jubilee that has one of them in all the front pages of the newspapers having a confrontation with the police. If that person is arrested, we need not to ask ourselves from which political side of the divide he comes from. What has he done? And does it warrant an arrest? If these guys were arrested, the question should be, what did they do, not the state? Then number two, if you look at the investment they put and the number of votes that they got, you'd actually get to understand that these are just disruptors. They're trying to disrupt an electoral process that was meant to have the public engage with the leaders that presented themselves and have ideas content. In Matungu, for instance, the UDA candidate got 500 votes. For all that investment to get 500 votes. You know, the larger picture was Matungu and Kabuchai, Ford Kenya and ANC teamed up to lock Raila Odinga and ODM out of their strongholds. And it is understandable that going towards 2022, what Senator Moses Wetangula and Mudavadi want is to consolidate the Western region. And for them, the first step was to lock ODM out of it. But if you look at the number of votes that the ODM candidate got, it is worth the fight. You know, if for instance, you ask yourself, who was the UDA candidate in Kabuchai? Even the people of Kabuchai may not even know the name. Who was the ANC candidate in Matungu? You don't remember. But I certainly remember people from Nairobi, including some of my friends, calling his name in campaign rallies. Most Kenyans don't even know what he looks like, but now he has won. Why? Because the contest was simply political to lock ODM out of Western region, and then there was this disruptor that came in to take an opportunity and disrupt everything. And that is the politics that we're talking about. So if someone was arrested, let us not blame the state. People were arrested in Kisii, people were arrested in Nakuru, people were arrested in Bungoma and in Kakamega. You cannot blame the state when you are in a situation that people are breaking the law and you're one of the people breaking the law.
Dennis, I'll have you know this even as we get to closer to our first break on this one, because some people are saying that they were unfairly targeted. But when you look at some sentiments on social media, others asking, but wait, you're kilometers away, hundreds of kilometers away from your constituency where you should be dealing with your issues, or your county as well. And yet there you are for, let's say, for example, Nixon Korir, that front page, very many kilometers away from Langata, where he should be. And some people are saying, you're the one who went to look for problems there. You should be serving your people in Nairobi County.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I think there's evidence all over social media. And today I've had a new word, which I've never seen it in politics, called disruptor. But we will investigate it further. We saw evidence on social media. First of all, let me say that Honorable Nixon Korir was not there as a member of Parliament Langata. He was there in the designation of chief agent. And therefore, within the law, he sat well within the required jurisdiction and within the protected and the provided laws within the electoral acts that we have. Number two, we saw evidence that goons were mobilized to get him off his task given and provided by law. Goons descended on him with kicks and blows and all that. And we saw on social media a video. This is evidence that can be adduced in a court of law, that there was the area DO that had mobilized these gangsters against an elected official and against an official that has been accepted and ratified by IEBC. So you can therefore say that this was violence, A, against a member of parliament, B, against an election official, because Nixon Korir was there as an election official. And therefore, that in itself can be designated within electoral offenses. And also, because it was a DO that mobilized this, and I say, this is evidence that the video is there, the arguments are provided on the ground. So therefore, we can also say that this is state-sanctioned violence against,
Dennis,
the process of election.
Dennis, because we're talking about what has been on social media, so you need to say allegedly. You know, you need to do this.
I said allegedly.
That hasn't been proved yet. State-sanctioned violence is a very heavy statement.
No. When you say, by the way, what I said is that I have said that there's evidence, video evidence. There's those who are grounds. We have those videos and thereabouts, and we have seen this, and we have made certain judgments as per the law. And as per experience as a security officer, I can tell you there was a problem. And by the way, the DO needs to be investigated thereabout, because the disruption did not come from Nixon Korir. It came from the said DO. That said, there has been a pattern against anyone who is supporting UDA. So there is something that we call getting out the vote, and that is the responsibility of anyone supporting the party and usually elected official. We have seen the intimidation of members of parliament or whatever it is, whether they're senators or whatever it is, who are aligned to UDA, being targeted early in the morning, even in their own homesteads. So this is an act of suppressing their ability to mobilize their voters to go and vote. And it's not an offense to mobilize. It is an offense to induce through any kind of financial gratuity or whatever it is. But it is okay to mobilize your voters thereabout. So when you suppress an elected member of parliament or even a candidate, then you're sending a strong warning to anybody who is supporting this candidate that you will face some level of violence and thereabout. And you send fear, and therefore, by and large, by extrajudicial means litigating an aspect of fear. So there has been a pattern. Anyone who would not want to close one eye and open the other would know that there has been a pattern that has been adjudicated against
Dennis, I hear you on that.
And Jeff, as I close,
very quickly,
is a very unfortunate incident whatsoever because it undermines democracy.
Dennis, I hear you on that. 30-second rejoinder, Hezbon, before you get into the break.
I agree with Dennis on one thing, that this is something that needs to be investigated. You know, you cannot base your judgment on what is on social media and say that a DO, mobilized goons against an elected member of parliament. But I think having said that, it is very unfortunate. No one should support violence. I don't support violence. And I think it is unfortunate whatever happened to Nixon Korir. It is dangerous. And I hope politicians are taking heed of that, never to put themselves in a situation where they confront an irate mob. Number two, there is the allegation of a DO being involved or a police officer. There is also allegation of voter bribery. These are all electoral malpractices, and they should be investigated before we pass judgment. Okay, I want to take a short break at that point. Come back after the break, look at some of your feedback at I am Jeff Mote on Twitter, and get back into that conversation because we've seen what's happened. How do we prevent this from happening again? That's coming up. Don't go too far. This is KTT for this morning.